Hey, welcome back, everybody. I have Paul Walia back, and we did our mock draft the other day. Paul made all the picks, and we're just ready to go with the NFL draft prospects. And Paul wanted to come back on and share his Puka Power Prospects. How you doing, Paul?
Fantastic, fantastic. Always love to talk football with you.
Okay, explain to everybody what your Puka Power Prospects are.
I've always been a fan of the day three part of the draft, finding those players that might be underappreciated, not getting too much love on the draft circuit. And we saw how Puka just sort of shocked the world and let everyone know it doesn't matter where you're drafted, it's what you bring to the table. So I wanted to do a segment about a certain number of players that I have. The criteria is pretty straightforward. Have to be a day three prospect officially. So what I did is I went over 5 different databases, calculated the average draft position, so they had to be lower than 101. So if the
Okay.
average draft position came out lower than 101, they were included on the list. We did lose two of the players that were on this list. The first was Kyrie Jackson. I'll shout him out right now. Big physical corner that I just loved. Transferred from Alabama to Oregon. He got moved up. He's averaging now like 83. So that was one. And one of the players that we talked about, also another corner. I'm sorry, safety, Javon Bullard. He actually got moved up, and he's like at 63 now, which is amazing. So we lost him off our list as well.
And the edge rusher out of UCLA, he was kind of on the fence, right? We dropped him at the last second. Is it
Yeah,
Gabriel Murphy?
Gabriel Murphy, other side of Latu. He started out a day three prospect, but now he is a solid day two prospect.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go through this. We're going to start with one particular favorite of yours, then we'll walk through some defensive guys, and we'll wrap it up with the offensive guys. If we don't get to the offensive guys this episode, we'll save it for another one. We'll see how
Yeah.
long this takes. So your first guy, who do you want to talk about?
So, um, so I just want to preface everything by saying that after the combine, as we'll definitely see players on this list or other players um, become identified, become valued. And then what we'll do is have another segment after the combine, and we will update this list. So this will be great. So it'll be very, very useful for Ram Nation. I did try to keep each player, because this is a Ram podcast, is that how does it fit within the Ram scheme of things and the viability of them being drafted by the Rams? So, and there is a definite flavor that you're going to see, a definite trend across all these players that will show my biases that Mark is well aware of. But I really do love those type of players that are those hard workers, team captains, just like the Rams value. I like the multi-year starters, the ones that have a great story, overcame a lot of adversity. So let's take a look, and let's start with my favorite, high velocity Vasi, Sione Vaki from Utah.
Okay, tell us
So,
about him.
so Sione Vaki is one of my favorite players. He is a very unique player. He is a player that's unique in this respect. He's not a Swiss Army knife, and I don't really like that term when they apply it to him, because he's more than that. He does many things well. He is a legitimate three-phase player. What does that mean? He impacts all 3 phases of the game. So let me just give you a little bit of a summary on Sione Vaki. And let me start by saying shout out to our Polynesian Ramley members and to their rich and robust culture. So first off, Sione Vaki, I mean, this is just a rocked up player. They have him listed as 6 feet 215. He's from Northern California. Great trivia fact: he backed up Najee Harris while he was at high school at running back, and he also was invited to the Polynesian Bowl when he was a high school player. The Polynesian Bowl is an annual high school football all-star game. They hold it out at Aloha Stadium every January, and it features many of the top high school seniors in the country. Most are of Polynesian ancestry. So he plays for Utah, and just to give you just a little bit of a summary in terms of his stats. So in terms of his 22 and 23 stats. Defensively, 40 tackles in 22, 50 tackles in 23, 5 passes defended in both years, 2 sacks in 23, and an interception in 23. He was mainly used as a box defender. He did spend a little bit of time as a single high defender, but also jumped down into the slot and covered tight ends. He was very effective in the slot, where he could be really physical, and where he could also close quickly on runners near the line of scrimmage. Showed great toughness and great blitzing ability. But here's where it gets interesting. In 23, he also had 42 carries because the running back position was hit hard by injuries at Utah. 42 carries, 317 rushing yards. His average was 7.5 yards a carry, Mark. His longest run was 75 yards. Okay, as a receiver, 11 receptions, 203 yards. Mark, what was his average? 18 and a half yards a reception. 18 and a half. And he took 3 to the house. Okay, so not only is this a player that brings a lot of intangibles to the table, but he is tough as nails. He is a heat-seeking missile. He impacts the game on the field, offensively, defensively, and as special teams. He's able to cover kicks. He is also a returner, so kickoff returner as well as punt returner. What else is there to say? He has the ball skills to cover in his zone. He loves contact. Offensively, his potential is only limited by McVay's imagination. So go ahead.
So most importantly, his the primary reason the Rams would draft him would be as a starting safety. So you pair him up with someone else, and then they added the next thing I could see realistically him participating in is kick returns, punt returns, and kick returns, and then realistically he might give the Rams the ability to maybe activate one less running back on game day than they normally would. If he's, is it realistic that he could learn the playbook as a rookie, the offensive playbook as a rookie, if we are assuming he's starting at one of the safety spots? I don't know.
So excellent segue. So let's start with one of the Ram updates. So we know Ronnie Rivers got tendered, correct? So Ronnie Rivers is back in the fold. And we talked about the running back room at our last segment. So what do we have? We have Aaron Kyren. We have Rivers. We have the kid from Ole Miss, Evans, right? This is a great fit for that number 4 RB role, right? I honestly believe that Vaki could be a phenomenal running back. No question about it. He has the long distance speed. Whether or not he has the wiggle to play to be like a feature back, that's a different story. But the kid is tough as nails. So you're right. The idea is that he can contribute in that arena if, just like what happened at Utah, when they do call his numbers, he's ready. He's also a great receiver out of the backfield. So let's look ahead somewhere down the line. Could he spell Aaron Kyren some great plays out of the backfield, screens, let him leak out of the backfield, let him get downfield? Listen, the kid is a home run hitter, regardless of where you put him on offense.
And I guess I'm going to take an educated guess, he's also good at pass blocking.
Yep, very, very willing pass blocker, very physical. So that's the problem. I think he's a victim of his own skill set. He's so good at everything he does. And at Utah, the coaches admitted that. They didn't know how to utilize him early on. They really didn't. And he was just a natural fit at safety, right? That sort of hybrid safety linebacker role. So for me, I think he's a slam dunk. This is Puka Part 2. He would fit for the Rams in a lot of different arenas. I think I could see him right off the bat playing on defense with a night in that safety rotation. Listen, we know we got one starter. That's Lake. That he's not coming out of the lineup. No question about it, right?
Right. And so we've done some mock drafts. You did one. I've done a few. And I think it's pretty clear at this point that the Rams, they have a pick 100, and is it pick 152, 153?
Yeah.
And he's going to go somewhere in between those two picks. So if the Rams are going to have a shot at him, they either have to use that late third round pick or they have to find a way into the fourth round.
And
So,
and you know what the scary thing is? He's going to absolutely, absolutely light up the combine
yeah. And
in
that's one
every
of the
time.
reasons we wanted to do this before the combine so that we can prep all of our viewers and listeners of what guys they might be looking for at the combine. We're predicting who is going to elevate their name at the combine, basically.
And
Okay,
this kid, he's going to interview lights out. I mean, he's just going to be fantastic. Immediate contributor, special teams, no question about it. He could right away return kicks for us. He could cover kicks, and he can definitely get into the safety hybrid linebacker mix. Like I said, heat-seeking missile on defense, and then let's see how he develops in that running back room. Right, what he brings to the table.
how sweet would it be to have Fuaga, Nakua, and Vaki all out there on offense together?
Listen,
We can only
Polynesian
dream.
power, baby. Polynesian
Yeah.
power all the way.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, you want to move on to our next guy? Is it the inside linebacker from Kentucky? Is that who you wanted to talk about next?
Yeah, so let's talk about one of my other favorites. We talked about him at the draft. Trevin Wallace, the linebacker from Kentucky. I think another great fit for the Rams. Right now, he is listed as a day 3, but once again, I think he's going to blow up the combine. And tell you honestly, let me tell you why. So he is rocked up. They got him listed as 6'1", 240. In high school, he was a two-way player, linebacker, played multiple spots on offense. Listen to this, Mark. He was a track and field athlete. He competed in 100 meters, 200 meters, 110 hurdles, high jump, long jump, and shot put. How's that sound? He was clocked at KU, at Kentucky, at I think this was in his junior year, 241 pounds. He was clocked at 22 miles an hour on the GPS, which was comparable to the wide receivers on the team. His vertical jump, 38.5 inches, power cleans 380, and squats a little bit under 600. He was named one of the team captains, and he started all 12 games in his senior year. So right off the bat, Mark, are you impressed?
Yeah. Yeah. And where do you expect him to go in the draft? We talking 5th or 6th round at this point?
I think he's going to fly up the boards. I think he's going to light up at the combine. And when people watch his film, listen, he jumps out on film. Watch any Kentucky game, and you will just see him just jump out at you. He had 80 tackles, 5.5 sacks, and 1 INT. I describe him as he's a high energy linebacker prospect. This kid is just got sideline to sideline speed, and he just plays hard, whistle to whistle, never ever shuts it down. He's got fantastic. He's probably one of the most athletic linebackers in this class. He hits like a runaway freight train. I just think when I look at him and I just picture him next to Ernest Jones, the Rams defense will take on a whole different dimension. The athleticism is just off the charts, and he does not have to come off the field. He is a legitimate 3-down linebacker.
Yeah, I guess the issue for the Rams, from the Rams' perspective, will be if they reduce the number of picks they have and go for quality. If they end up with 8 or 9 picks, my guess is they may not draft an inside linebacker at all, knowing this team. Right. But if they keep 10 or 11 picks, they're going to scatter it all over all these position groups, and hopefully Wallace is a linebacker they come home with.
He's an easy prospect to overlook. So even after the combine, I'm hoping he stays as one of our what we like to call day 3 diamonds. So if he winds up being a day 3 diamond, and the Rams see that, we saw that with Puka when they were like, the BYU is still on the board, right? So let's see. I think this kid is a legitimate has a legitimate shot, and I think Vaki does as well to wind up on the Rams.
Okay, next up, we've talked about this guy a little bit. Take it away. We're talking about the big defensive tackle.
And as you can see, my SEC bias is showing through, right, Mark? So we had our linebacker from Kentucky, and then we have what we call Mount McKinley, Jackson McKinley from the Aggies. This guy, he was also in my mock. one of my favorite prospects in this draft. Jackson McKinley, defensive tackle from Texas A&M, listed at 6'2", 325, a true senior, came out of high school. He was the number one prospect in the state of Mississippi, Mark. All right. This year, he started all 12 games at defensive tackle, finished the season with 27 tackles, five and a half tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but when you're playing the nose in the SEC and you have 5.5 tackles for loss and 3 sacks, that's saying a lot. He also served as the season-long team captain. Mark, we see a trend developing here? The things that captaincy criteria that we look for? Okay, once again, comes up to play. What I love about this kid is his durability. He started 40 games in 4 years at nose tackle. Okay? And in the SEC, that is not a small feat. That is substantial. Overall, this is a twitched up, talented defensive tackle. I think he has one of the highest ceilings at this particular position in the entire draft class when it comes to interior defensive tackle. Now, not only can he anchor against the run, if you watch his tape, when he got a chance to, to penetrate and get after it, he was not able to be blocked one-on-one. So you can use him in a lot of different ways. You can get creative in an even front or an odd front, but you can use him at the 3, the 2-eye, which the Rams love, that tight front. So you can use him at the 3, that eagle 2-eye, the 1, or the 0. That type of scheme versatility in a true run defender is very, very rare. And if you think about it, what a front, Mark. Let's take a look at this, right? Left end, the conductor. Mount McKinley in the middle and 99 problems on the right. I would take those 3 down linemen any time of the day.
Same school as Bobby Brown, too.
That's right. And we got Bobby Brown at depth. We keep Mount McKinley fresh. Listen, he can do a lot of damage, not just defending the run, but getting after the passer. And that's
another guy. Well, you picked him in your mock draft, our mock draft number 4.
Yes,
I'm not sure if that was the 100 pick or a 5th round pick.
Fourth round.
Yeah, but another guy that your Rams are going to have to. The Rams are going to have to find a way into the 4th round, or they're going to miss out on a lot of these prospects, and I think they will.
Because a lot of these players, like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? They might be, let's say, 5th round now or 4th round now, but after the combine, you never know. They're going to get elevated. So They have that first rounder. Like I said, if they don't feel like they have that player that they love there at 19, move back. There are going to be a lot of teams that'll be willing to, take that 19 and give you maybe a 2 or a 3 or a couple of 4s. Who knows? Go for it. And load up on these type of players. These type of players, and the reason we're doing this segment is to show you there is a theme here, the intangibles. Puka really highlighted for a lot of people the importance of the intangibles and not just what you see at the combine, not just what you see with the 40 times. It is that competitiveness, that hyper-competitiveness, I should say, right? That desire to win, but more importantly, the desire to be better, the desire to fit into a team concept, and the willingness to fit into a team concept.
Okay, the next guy up, I'm going to let you handle his last name. Another defensive lineman?
Oh, yes. My buddy from Alabama. The SEC love continues, right? Justin Eboigbe, right? He's listed as 6'5", 292. He played I have him listed as playing in 14 games in 23. Came up probably his best year, 7.5 sacks, 11.5 tackles for losses. In his career, started 56 games at Alabama, 5 years he played there at Alabama. He lost most of 22 to injury, but was named to the All-SEC first team this year by the SEC conference coaches. And that really stands out to me. The coaches so the teams that he played against, the coaching staff recognized the importance of this kid and what he brought to the table for Alabama. This kid plays big in big games. Every big Alabama game, he came through. He's a very good run defender, with impressive upper body strength. He's got those long arms that I love. And as you see, like Mount McKinley, he's 6'2", 325. We mentioned the conductor. We mentioned Donald. We have a lot of those low to the ground, 6'2", 300, 6'2", 290 penetrators. But this kid is that long D lineman that we haven't had, right, Mark, for a long time. He's criticized for not having an advanced pass rush move to go to. But as a 3-4 end with length, I think he would be perfect for the Rams. He definitely has pass rush potential when you watch him. He's described as stiff. I don't really see that. I see a much more twitch. I think a lot of that has to do, like I've said before, when you play in a confined system. Let's say if your job is to shut down a particular gap or play run defense, I think that does sort of take away from the pass rush potential. I think he fits perfectly for the Rams as a rotational D lineman with length. He reminds me, Mark, a shorter Michael Brockers. And I know how you and I are both Michael Brocker fans.
Yeah, I missed that guy. We really lost something when he left.
And that length is important. And think about it. When you bull rush and you just put your arms up and you're 6'5", listen, a tipped pass, that's as good as a sack.
Okay. Who you got next?
One of my favorite players in this draft, man. I love this kid once again, LSU. I love LSU linemen. The Tigers know what they're doing. And this kid is Jordan Jefferson. He is listed as 6'3", 320. He played in all 12 games. I'm sorry. He was a transfer from West Virginia in 22 and then transferred to LSU. So this was his first year at LSU. In 22, he logged in at 12 games, 553 snaps for the Mountaineers. He added 18 tackles, 7 assists. As a pass rusher, he tallied 12 total pressures, 8 quarterback hurries, and 3 sacks. He transferred to LSU as a fifth-year senior, played in 12 games, took part in 379 snaps for the Tigers, but started the final 6 games at defensive tackle for the Tigers. He finished first among all LSU defensive linemen in tackles. Not bad, right? 7 TFL and 2.5 sacks. In total, he's played in 55 college games. This guy is just an absolute road warrior. His highlight moment, probably everybody remembers, he had that he sacked that Wisconsin quarterback late in the game in the bowl game, forced a fumble, and he sealed the victory. So what I love about this kid is he has a great first step for a player his size. Even if you didn't watch the Senior Bowl, if you go back to the one-on-one drills, which I think is a little unfair to the offensive lineman, to be honest with you, but if you watch those one-on-one drills as a D lineman, he was very, very consistent. He got off quickly, had a great first step. But what I like about him, he showed multiple ways to win. He wasn't just going to one move. He wasn't just relying on speed. He wasn't just relying on bull rush. He's not a slow, lumbering nose tackle, as some people might perceive him. He's got get up and go. He needs to work on his technique, but overall, he has all the other intangibles that you would want in an interior D lineman for the Rams. I think he would be great on the Rams' interior rotation. I could see him doing the 0, the 1, the 2I, right? Easily would be fantastic at the 1 or the 2I because, like I said, he has much more in terms of penetration skill than people are giving him credit for. He's also incredibly strong. If you watch him, the way this kid takes on and absorbs double teams, right now he plays a little high, but everything else, great interviews, great personality, great temperament. I think he would fit in great with the Rams.
Yeah, those are the types of guys the Rams like for sure. And you're talking about really strong defensive linemen. What about this next guy on our list?
Oh, yeah. So once again, we were in the draft. We did the mock, and he was one of the players I was really excited about. And Mark was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I got to do some research on this guy." And Mark was impressed by certain achievements, and I'm going to read them off. So Gabe Hall is a player out of Baylor. He's listed as 6'5", 290, 295, somewhere between there. He was listed he was number 45 on a list of exceptional athletes, NCAA athletes that they do, what they call the freak list. He benches 500 pounds. He squats 565. He cleans 365 and deadlifts 750. Mark, this is my favorite one. You ready? He hit 19.9 miles per hour on the GPS. Urban legend.
Those weightlifting measurements that's the same. That's what I do. Just move the decimal place over one to the left. That's where I'm at. Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
I'll join you in that category as well, right? These numbers, for those of you in Ram Nation, are absolutely astounding. And then to have the quickness to hit almost 20 miles an hour, this is why I love this kid.
Yeah.
And this is why when we do these segments, people say, well, then explain, how does that happen? Well, at Baylor, he's playing in a 4-point stance 90% of the time. Right? Because they run that 3-4, and his job is to really shut down the line of scrimmage. That's his job. And to let the linebackers do all the work and make all the tackles, right? But that's what we're talking about when you talk about scheme fit. He brings a lot more to the table than if you just look at his stats. Now, he's just salivating at the opportunity to show off his skills at the combine, right? Because when they see this, but not only when they see him run the 40, but when they see him do everything else, they're going to be like, holy cow, this guy can play. So overall, once again, Ram Nation, are we seeing a theme? Guys that have played multiple seasons, that have the durability, that have that explosive athleticism. Okay, he started 47 games, 12 and a half sacks in his career, 16 and a half tackles for losses, solid run defender. His strength at the point of attack and arm length just basically stand out when you watch him. He's hard to move one-on-one. He's got everybody was talking about the Senior Bowl. He flashed some pass rush moves, a cross chop, arms rip move. He was able to escape blocks. He's got a really nice base when he plays against the run. Like I said, he's spent a lot of time in the 3-4 at Baylor. So I think he's a great fit for the Rams. But more importantly, he's able to run, has great feet. He's still raw when it comes to the pass rush, but we're starting to see a lot of these moves. He's got these long arms. I think he's going to have no problem generating pass rush and getting sacks at the next level.
So there's 4 straight defensive linemen that you've named here.
Absolutely.
Who's your favorite of those 4? If you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one, Mount McKinley is my favorite.
Okay. And that's probably the area of biggest need for the Rams.
Oh yeah, he would solve that run
along the defensive line, anyways.
Absolutely. I think Gabe Hall. I think he's another one. Even after a great combine, I think he might still wind up, like you were saying, like maybe round 4. I think he might be able to sneak up into round 3. Listen, put this guy anywhere from, I think, left defensive end or right defensive end, he'd be fine. He could also play the nose. I did watch his reps at nose tackle. He was able to play the nose. He did great. So I just think he'd be fantastic. He fits the Ram system. I think he could play the 5, the 4-eye. I think he could do the 3. You name it. He's just a great defensive lineman with length, a la Michael Brockers.
Okay. And by the way, let's see, Jefferson from LSU, Brockers from LSU, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
SEC pride, baby.
Yeah.
So everybody knows my bias towards safeties as well. I love safeties. But, Mark had mentioned all these linemen. Listen, football is won in the trenches. So when you invest in the O-line and the D-line, the results are basically pretty much straightforward, right? It's right there for everybody to see. This is a player that I absolutely love, which I think he's also going to do well at the combine. Incredible athlete. His name is Cole Bishop, 6'2", 205, multi-year starter for the youth. He came over as a true freshman in 21, and early on he was used largely as a box defender. But right away, the coaches said that they could see he just had that desire for contact. He played high safety this year, and he produced in a big way. 60 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 INTs. Let me just run down Cole Bishop for you. 29 starts in 3 years. Once again, we're seeing that trend, right? Multi-year player, right? He was a Senior Bowl invite, 23 College Football Network All-American second team, 23 Jim Thorpe Award semifinalist, 3-time Pac-12 All-Conference. He had 2 games with 10-plus tackles, both coming against Florida in 22 and 23, 12 and 11 respectively. This year led the secondary with 60 tackles, had 6.5 TFL, 3 sacks. He had 9 third down stops, tied for most on the team. What does that tell you, Mark? 9 third down stops. He also defended 5 passes, 2 INTs, 3 pass breakups, forced a fumble, and had two fumble recoveries. This is a great prospect. He is a physical safety with solid ball skills and scheme versatility.
Now he's gonna go before Vaki, right?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, his ball skills will probably put him ahead of Vaki, right? Vaki, like I said, his biggest detriment is that he does everything well and doesn't have like one single niche to sort of draw upon, which I think is the wrong way to look at him. I think a lot of people that are looking at him the wrong way. I think he's a great hybrid safety linebacker. I think he's a hybrid safety. I think he can, like I said, he's a contributor. How many players can impact the game in 3 phases, in all 3 phases at any one given moment? Not many. Oh. So I think that's his true value. Really what it is that his true value is that he's going to impact all 3 phases of the game at any given moment.
And whereas Bishop is more of a cover safety.
Absolutely. Cover safety, box safety. And that's his real selling point, I think. He can play it any way you need it. He can mix it up in the box. He can track the ball downfield. He needs to clean up his tackling. He just loves to come down like a heat-seeking missile and sometimes doesn't break down. But also a lot of times he won't go for the INT. He'll go for the big hit. And we see that a lot with the safeties coming out of college. So I think, he is a player that is definitely going to benefit from NFL coaching. He's definitely going to be able to generate more turnovers in the NFL than he did in college. I see him as a future ringleader for a secondary. He's got the intangibles. He's got the leadership ability. And Mark, can we stop for a moment? Quentin Lake, strong safety. Bishop, free safety. Is that not a fantastic duo?
Yeah. Now how do you feel about Quentin Lake vacating that star position? Would you rather keep him there? And
you know what? I think nowadays, and we saw that in the Detroit game when they were just targeting Hoyt, they kept throwing the ball to his side until, the Rams decided that they were going to stop it. When you have 2 safeties that can jump down and do that, right? That can jump down and cover. So you have 2 players that can, theoretically play the star, right? I think you have a lot of scheme versatility. Do I think Quentin Lake would be better off outside of the star? Probably, right? Only because he can give you so much in other arenas. And then you can find somebody that maybe might be more adept at the cover part of it. He did prove that he can cover. In no way are we critiquing his ability to cover. I'm just saying that he could bring more in a lot of other arenas to the Rams.
Yeah, and I wish we knew what the Rams were thinking in that regard with Johnson and Fuller free agents. What are they going to do with Quentin Lake? Do they see Yeast as a full-time starter potentially? I know they kind of benched him a little bit for a while there. Then they brought him back. Do
you see Yeast almost in that Nick Scott mold?
Yeah, right? I guess. I'm just not sure if I'm not sure if he's what I would call a really good safety at this point. I just don't know. I don't know. I didn't see enough of him. I didn't go back and watch closely. I was just reading what others were saying about Yeast. I thought he was playing well early on in his career. And then I started to, there was some people were kind of down on him. And I think the Rams coaching staff was down on him a little bit. But
And I
hey,
think
I
that's
don't,
I think that's a great example, though, Mark, that you brought up with Yeast, though. So think about it. If he's playing in that dime spot, how many plays is he actually getting in on, right? So there are guys that maybe only contribute 19 plays in a game, but that's substantial,
yeah.
correct? So I think the way that the offense in the NFL has sort of progressed, that defenses have to be, you have to have flexibility and versatility. That is a priority. If you do not have that, they will dissect you and dice you in a heartbeat. They will
Yeah.
find.
And,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just going to say, just going off on a tangent here, and this is one of my pet peeves. A lot of people don't realize Russ Yeast, a seventh round pick, is actually a very good draft pick. He's contributed out of the seventh round there. So
And,
give the
that, and,
Rams
that,
credit for that.
and that's the whole point of the segment. What about Quentin Lake?
Yeah,
You
right.
talk about playing a star position. How many? Do you know what kind of talent level you need to have to play the star position?
Yeah,
What kind of skill set?
and he seems like I saw an interview of him. You don't see a lot of interviews of players like him, a little, not marquee type players. Super intelligent guy, really smart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say everyone on this list, like for example, if I'm not mistaken, Cole Bishop was also an academic honor award winner as well. About 3 or 4 of the guys that I just mentioned were also received academic accolades as well.
Hey,
But
I was
go
going to
ahead.
go off on another tangent, and it's not part of this segment, but remember my buddy Lad McConkey?
Yeah.
He was the winner of the Warfel Award. And I didn't know what that was. And I looked it up, and it's something to the effect of the best combination of athletic, community service, academics,
Yeah. Fantastic.
the
Yeah.
whole shebang. So, yeah, he's going to be a great player.
And
So,
a lot of teams now have this award. It's called Community Service Leader Award, right? Community Service
right,
Leader Award. I think a lot of the SEC teams have that, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. And that's really what we're doing when we purposely call this the Puka Power players. These are the players that bring a lot more to the table than just on the field. They
yeah,
are in terms of what they bring to the community as role models to the other players on the team. Just creating that culture that we're talking about, that winning culture, not just about winning games, but winning in life. And that's a big deal if you think about it, that
yeah.
sometimes it's overlooked in the world of professional
Yeah,
sport.
and that's why I was a big fan early on of Tremaine Ankrum. I don't know
Yeah,
if you heard the stories about him.
yeah.
His rookie season, he was on the bench, not getting any playing time that I'm aware of. And they found he didn't. No one even knew he was down there on weekends in downtown LA helping feed the homeless.
Yeah.
And
And that's
so,
exactly what we're talking about. That's
right.
exactly what we're talking about.
Okay, so we talked enough about Bishop. Now this next guy, this next cornerback, I did take a moment to look at his tape and talk about a feisty cornerback from the a little bit I did see. Take it away on Devonshire for us.
MJ Devonshire. So I had to put him on here because my buddy went to Pitt, and we watch the Pitt games sometimes, and we always laugh about that. So because the Pitt uniforms look a lot like the Ram uniforms, and we're both Ram fans. So what's really great about that, before I go into Devonshire, I just want to highlight when we started to see the theme as we went through all these players, right? The team captaincy, a lot of the awards, multi-year starter, the durability, right? Maybe not getting all the glory because of, for whatever reason, maybe scheme that they play in, but the productivity is definitely there. This is a guy, whenever we would watch, he would just jump out at us. You talk about a feisty corner. This if there's one characteristic of every player on my list, hyper competitive. That is exactly what we want. The ultimate road warrior. That's what we want. And he's listed as 5'11", 190. There's no way he's 190. But, we'll give him that 5'11", 190. This kid is just an absolute joy to watch. He had a great career at high school, went to a Pennsylvania powerhouse. Mark, another trend. 3 sports stand out in high school: football, basketball, and track. He played defensive back at football, wide receiver, and he returned kicks. As a senior, the team went 14-1, and they won, I think, the 3A championship. He had 27 catches for 571 yards. He scored 24 total touchdowns. He scored 4 different ways his final season mark. Let me say that again. He scored 4 different ways his senior year playing football. 24 total touchdowns. 8 interceptions on defense. And he had 3 in the state title game. Mark, he had 3 INTs in the state title game. 8 kickoff or punt return touchdowns. And that was 1 short of the national high school record. He had 5 return touchdowns that were nullified by penalties. So he would have had another 5.
Yeah, I was going to say in camp, if the Rams draft him and he's tackling Puka in camp, they're going to have to separate him every time.
But if he's returning kicks in camp or during the season, you know he's going to take it to the house. So that he's absolutely electric. What I loved in high school, he was named the Player of the Year by the football writers. Okay, he was also voted Athlete of the Year, high school athlete, and averaged more than 17 points per game in basketball. Okay, won 2 track titles, 100 and 200 meters, when he was in high school. All right, so you got this storied high school career. He actually wind up once again, SEC, Mark. He actually went to Kentucky, right? And then wound up transferring to Pitt. Since he's been at Pitt, his career has been nothing but about making clutch plays. All right? He had a clutch interception in this 21 season, which was his first career interception against North Carolina, which sealed the win. He finished that 21 season with 17 tackles, 3 pass deflections, 1 INT. But he's best remembered for that famous, what do they call it, Mark? The Pitt 6. The interception against West Virginia in that famed backyard brawl. He intercepted the pass, returned it for 56 yards as Pittsburgh beat WV. He was named ACC Defensive Player of the Week 4 times. He finished the 22 season with 34 tackles, 8 pass deflections, 3 INTs, and 2 touchdowns. He also returned 24 punts, 1 for a touchdown.
And he's another guy that's probably going to go, my guess, looking at my draft board here, probably another 4th round guy, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Some people have him as low as round 6. He's one of those guys that can get easily overlooked. His senior year, he played really well. He was, once again, 2nd team All-ACC, so that's 2 years in a row, junior year, senior year. Like I said, knack for the big play, can contribute as a returner and as a cornerback in his career. 38, what did he have? 46 punt returns, 347 yards, and a touchdown in his career at Pitt. 8 INTs, 3 he took to the house. So what do you have here? You have a kid with a lot of potential. He's physical enough against the run. He has to work on his tackling, no question about it. When you watch a Pitt game, he just jumps out at you, right? And that's the first thing you said, right? When you watch him, just feisty. He's always challenging the high point of the catch against receivers. And listen, they were outmanned in a lot of games. They were, when you watch the Pitt games. And this is a lot of Aaron Donald love, right? Because of Pittsburgh. So AD 99.
Right, yeah.
So I think, like I said, he can contribute. I'm hoping even after the combine, he stays in that late round range. I think he can, fly under the radar a little bit. Rams pick him up, add him to that room. Whatever role he contributes in, whether it's dime, nickel, maybe down the road as a surprise starter, he's going to contribute. He's going to make big plays. And that's one thing the Rams need out of their secondary in that zone is you have to be able to make those big plays. INT, and even better, INT and take it to the house.
Right. We need more of that. Yeah.
Trammell thankfully was not tendered, Ram Nation. Can we all just go, thank goodness. Trammell was not tendered. So I have so far 2 candidates for guys that could contribute on defense, but also return kicks.
Not just fair catch.
Not just fair catch. actually
Okay.
do something when they catch the ball.
Okay, our next guy up. Oh, what do you know? Another SEC guy, a running back out of Kentucky. Is he out of Kentucky, Ray Davis?
Ray Davis and Mark, this is why we do the segment for players like Ray Davis. Wait till you hear this kid's story. So Ray Davis is one of my favorite players, if not my favorite player in this draft, next to Vaki. Okay, he's from San Francisco, California. He has 14 siblings. This is a kid spent time in foster care, was also homeless for a period of time. Um, but what was great about him, and he openly tells his story, there was a point in his life where he daily had to find a place to sleep on a regular basis. Like basically, his priority was, where am I going to sleep tonight? Where's my next meal coming from? But he always found a way to get to school. He always found a way to play sports because that was his way of having human contact. That was his way of keeping his mind off of everything that was going on. But I just think about that, not knowing where your next meal is coming from at that age. He was fortunate. He was playing in a basketball league on a chance ride home. And I use that in air quotes, right? Ride home. One of his friend's parents actually started talking to him and found out about his situation and supported him and helped him out. They eventually got him a scholarship to a school right here, Mark, in New York, in Dutchess County. It's called Trinity Pauling School. And then he wound up his last year to get eligible for college. He spent a year at what's called Blair Academy. I think it's in New Jersey. All right, to get eligible for college. At Blair, he ran for 1,700 yards and 35 touchdowns in 8 games. Let me say that again. 1,700 yards and 35 touchdowns at Blair. Okay? He finished his entire high school career with 48 touchdowns, and he also played defense, linebacker on defense. Right? He transferred to Kentucky after 2 seasons at Vandy, and he also played 2 seasons at Temple. He got the scholarship offer to go to Temple. He played in 44 career college games, 37 career starts. He finished his collegiate career, ready for this, Mark? 3,626 rushing yards, 29 rushing touchdowns. And add on to that 94 receptions for another 762 receiving yards, an additional 12 receiving touchdowns. All in all, 4,400 all-purpose yards, 41 total touchdowns. He is 4th on the NCAA's active career total rushes list with 733. So this guy, somebody might say, well, he's got a lot of wear and tear on him. That's okay. He was the first active player in Division I to chart 1,000 rushing yards at 3 different schools, Temple, Vandy, and Kentucky. First player in SEC history to gain 1,000 or more rushing yards at 2 different programs, Vandy and Kentucky. Is that impressive?
Yeah, and consider the defenses he's going up against playing for Vanderbilt in Kentucky.
Thank you.
And
Yep.
and it sounds like a guy that, to say nothing about his physical toughness, he's got to be extremely mentally tough.
What you talk about character, right? There's not a grade you can give this kid for character. He's off the charts. But not only that, he is committed to being a well-rounded player. He has had 1 reception in 25 straight games. Okay? At the Senior Bowl, the coaches basically commented he was the best running back in terms of out of the backfield catching passes. Right? And there were some very impressive players out there with great skills out of the backfield. The kid has great vision. He is an absolute wrecking ball. He is that classic one cut and go, or I like to say one cut and trample. He's a great pass catcher. We just talked about that. Kudos to him and all the wonderful people in his life that helped him to get to the point that he's about to get drafted. This is what professional sports is all about. He will never go hungry again. He will never be homeless again. And I hope he winds up as a member of the Ramley, because I think this guy is a great player, but he's even a greater human being. And you were talking about our buddy helping out and, with the homeless and, maybe talking to kids. going to schools, offering mentorship opportunities. This is the kind of player you want in the Rams locker room. Okay? This is a player, and I know the Rams are not big on drafting running backs. Even when they do, our backup running backs don't get a lot of burn. But this is just a kid you want on your team. This is the type of kid like Sione Vaki that you want to bring him onto your team, and the culture just around your organization is just going to change instantaneously. To hear this kid tell his story, and for those of you in Ram Nation, there's a lot of really good media out there about his story. And when you hear his story, you're just going to have a lump in your throat what this kid went through to get to this point. So, a fantastic ball player, even better human being. But watch him run the rock. I mean, he does not go down on first contact, always falling forward, always churning out extra yards, an absolute beast near the goal line.
Hey, you sold me. I'm a Ray Davis fan, and the Rams do typically draft a running back. My special assistant and I have been arguing that you should do so every year, whether it's in the seventh round or the first round, wherever it is. Draft a running back every year, and I suspect the Rams will.
Listen, we don't have enough. We don't have enough running back spots for the players that I cited already.
I know. Yeah. The next guy you cite as, I believe you cited him as the best blocking tight end in the draft.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let me qualify that. He's still very raw, right? But when he does lock on, holy cow, it is a pancake. So his name is Brevin Spanford. He's the tight end from Minnesota. Does not have eye-popping numbers in terms of production. So when you look at his career numbers, not mind-blowing to say the least, right? He stayed in state, went to Minnesota. We know Minnesota is a school that runs the rock pretty much fairly well. This kid is just raw and nasty. I love his temperament. I love his football IQ. And Mark, and Ram Nation, you all remember, I'm still smarting from missing out on my buddy from Georgia, Darnell Washington, from last year, right? This kid would be a great developmental tight end. He reminds me a lot of Roland Williams, right? The kid just needs to put it all together. He has the size, the speed, he has the hands, his technique is there. It's just raw. And we have seen the work that the Ram coaches have done with Davis Allen. Imagine this kid with Davis Allen. We are talking some serious size and skill. This kid is listed 6'7", 270, Mark. 6'7", 270. And then we got Duncan Davis Allen, right? We have all seen the tape of him dunking a basketball, right? This kid, along with Davis Allen, young, beastly, talented. In 23, he had 25 receptions, 239 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. Career stats, 95 receptions, 1,061 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. His accolades, all Big Ten honorable mention, 22 and 23. Mark, academic, all Big Ten, his entire collegiate career. Let me say that again. Academic, all Big Ten, his entire collegiate career.
And the Big Ten, that's saying something.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of very, very good academic schools there, as opposed to your SEC. Sorry.
I think he's good. Did you just knock the SEC academic?
Well, as compared to what we used to know as the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, I think that's a fair statement, but not to take anything away from. Go ahead.
So the SEC.
Did I just start a first Paul Mark argument?
Never. Mark is my brother in arms always. So for my SEC Ramley out there, we know that the SEC works just as hard in the classroom as they do on the football field. All right. So one thing I will say is, Mark, think about this. Even if he does well at the combine, he's so under the radar. He would be a great developmental tight end. Now, tight end is definitely not a priority, and we all know my agita every year is just that we can never get that second tight end on the field in 2 tight end sets. It just doesn't happen. We run that 11 all the time. So the thing is, as a developmental tight end, he would be perfect. I think he's just going to blow people out of the water when he gets a chance to play, just like Davis Allen is getting a chance to play, unfortunately, because Higgs got hurt. But I think we just strengthen up that tight end room with this kid and, might even save money on a veteran contract, right? We can go even cheaper on a tight end because now we know that we have this kid backing up Davis Allen.
Yeah, my thought on the tight end is number one, we don't know if Tyler Higbee is going to be ready to go. And if he isn't ready to go, and we're bringing back Davis Allen and Hunter Long, two really inexperienced players, although I'm hopeful about Hunter Long, what he could bring to this tight end group. Do they maybe just feel like they need to add a veteran, any veteran, to this tight end group as opposed to a draft pick? I don't know what the answer is, but just a thought. It's all dependent on Tyler Higbee's health. If Tyler Higbee looks like he's going to be good to go opening day, week 3 or 4, then yeah, add a draft pick. If not, maybe they bring in just a mid-level tight end to round out the room. But
and if that is the case, if Higbee's going to come back that early, first of all, I wouldn't rush him back. That's number one, right? Because we need him for the stretch run. There's no question about that, right? I think Davis Allen is going to shock a lot of people. I think that kid is uber talented.
Yeah, I agree.
No question about it. I think he's going to just stun people. And if they use him properly, his blocking game is definitely improved. But if they use him properly in the red zone and they put it up there on jump balls, etc., that kid can go get it. This kid right behind him can contribute immediately in the blocking game. And I think it would be perfect.
Yeah, and I just can't get that look on Hunter Long's face when they wheeled him off the field because I feel like he felt this was his opportunity finally after battling through injuries his first 2+ years in the league. So I'm pulling for him. I'm pulling for Tyler Higbee. And I'd like Tyler Higbee. We haven't seen the schedule yet. That comes out. I'm not sure when that comes out, but when it does come out, maybe he's going to circle that Detroit game in Detroit as his first game back.
There's some payback when we get to play Detroit again. Listen, we never want to listen. This is not like we're not like those lunatics with the bounty gates in there. That was just absolutely horrendous. But there's some payback when we go back to Detroit. Iron Kyren also, Matt Stafford. There were some cheap shots in that game. Puka, Cup. There were a lot of cheap shots in that game, and regardless, whatever. And Campbell knows better. And like I said, based on what I saw, because it happened more than once, that was definitely coming from the coaches. There's some payback that has to be dished out. And I hope in that game, the entire Ram team circles it collectively, and that should be blowout city and just trample those guys for what they're doing.
And I wonder how Jared Goff felt about that. Him and Higbee drafted together, remember? And I'm sure they have some type of relationship. Okay, next up, who do you have next up on your list? I'm not sure I have the same order as you.
I said, listen, look, this is a Puka segment. You got to have a wide receiver on here. I actually had 3 wide receivers on here, but for purposes of time, and I'll wait till after the combine, and I'll update the wide receiver part of it. And one wide receiver that's not on the list, but we should definitely cite from Texas A&M, Aeneas Smith, probably for his size, pound for pound, the nastiest blocker at wide receiver. He plays at Texas A&M. Really, really good wide receiver. I think he's going to do well at the combine as well. So let's talk about Puka, right? Under the radar, tall, muscular, wide receiver, hyper athletic. There's a receiver out there, Luke McCaffrey. Luke McCaffrey has really, really grown on me. The more I watch him, he's had not just an interesting career trajectory. Not only can we stick it to San Francisco as a bonus, but I really like this kid. And let me just go over a couple of highlights. 6'2", 205, right? Definitely has a room on his frame to add some more weight. He's had an interesting career trajectory. And as much as I delved into it, I really couldn't get a lot of details. He played high school football for his dad in Colorado. He played wide receiver and defensive back because his brother was the starting quarterback. Interesting, right? They eventually, I think, split quarterback duties. I think it was junior year. They won the state title. And then he went to Nebraska, and he started out as a quarterback. He then transferred to Louisville, and then wound up transferring to Rice, where he eventually, after a short stint in quarterback, also switched to wide receiver. And that's his dad's positions for Ram Nation. For those of you who know, this is Ed McCaffrey's son, 3-time Super Bowl winner with the Niners and the Broncos, and also probably, arguably, one of the best blocking wide receivers of all time, Ed McCaffrey. So
Which
this is
explains why both McCaffreys played high school ball in Denver.
absolutely. So what I like about McCaffrey, I'm going to just focus on that 2023 year. He played 12 games, 71 receptions, 992 yards, 13 TDs. He was the team captain. Mark, do we see a trend here? Team captain, academic honor roll, all first team. Okay, so the kid definitely gets high marks for leadership, gets high marks for hustle and effort, but he definitely has a skill set. He looked okay. You know, a lot of people knocked him at the Senior Bowl. He had a couple of drops, but listen, you know, this is a guy who's played 1.5 full years at wide receiver at Rice. So let's give the guy a break, man. But just the same way that they overlook Puka, I think people are overlooking this kid.
He
He's
sounds like a poor man's Lad McConkey to me.
poor man. Look at you, another McConkey reference. Absolutely. But he's just taller, right?
Right.
I love his height. I love his wingspan. He's got those long arms. That catch radius, as he gets comfortable with in his hands, that catch radius is just going to get longer and longer. Um, he already shows solid instincts. I love his yak ability. He needs to work on route running. He needs to, like I said, needs to work on his hands and tracking the football. 74-inch wingspan. He's
Now,
not afraid.
did you say 6'2", 205?
6'2", 205.
And isn't Cooper and Puka both like 6'2", 210 in that range?
In that range, yeah, in that
Yeah.
range. Are you saying there's some similarities there, Mark?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds like he can probably help out with the blocking a little bit as well.
And on social media, what's great about a lot of his videos is they show him going over the middle, and the number of times his helmet comes off, everybody's posting like, perhaps you need to buckle up your helmet or get a different size helmet, because there's about a 7 or 8 plays where his helmet comes flying off and he's standing there or sitting there on the field. He also is capable of returning kicks. There you go, right? Another way to contribute as a developmental wide receiver. I think he's a perfect fit for the Rams. Fourth receiver, developmental receiver. I think he's eventually going to develop into a star. I think he's perfect for our list. I'm interested in seeing how it's going to go at the combine for him. I think he's going to do really, really well, but I still think he's going to wind up being a day 3 diamond. So another play to circle Ram Nation if he winds up on the Rams roster. Listen, we called it right for Puka last year. So let's see if it happens. You know, lightning hits twice.
Yeah, and as far as the receiver group goes, with DeMarcus coming back, I'm actually developing a list, prioritized list of Ram needs, and I still think they need to draft a wide receiver. They don't need to bring in any veterans at this point. Any veterans they bring in would be icing on the cake, but to bring in a physical receiver, 4th, 5th, 6th round range, that's real promising. Now, if one of those top guys dropped to him at number 19, sure, but yeah,
that would be ideal, right? Wouldn't that be ideal?
yeah. So, who do you have next on your list?
All right, and shout out to the Rams front office for bringing back Rivers and D-Rob, right? Otherwise, probably if you're not a Ram fan, easy to overlook those guys. But shout out to the Rams front office.
Yeah, next up is Dotson and Witherspoon, or 2 very similar players, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I think we're all in the same boat. And shout out to the Ram Nation for those of you that commented after our mock draft. Keep them coming. Glad to see your comments. Glad to interact with you. Mark answers the post, as you see, very, very quickly. So, yeah, we always want your feedback and your insights. Absolutely. Yeah, and I can say for everybody in the Rams Up podcast, we are all in on Dotson. And I think we saw in real time when Mark got that update about the salary cap expansion. So I think we all smiled from ear to ear and said, listen, let's spend that extra money on Dotson, right? So this player is another player very easy to overlook. We're back in the SEC, Mark. Texas A&M, Aggie Pride. He's a guard, Layden Robinson, 6'4", 320. I love watching this kid play. I loved him at the Senior Bowl skill drills. 2-time team captain. He played in 10 games. He helped last year. He helped A&M get back to respectability. They had a rough season. Um, he's a pivotal leader in the locker room. Everybody said that. Texas A&M, shout out to Texas A&M. They do a great job of putting great media out there about their players. And everybody said everything about how important he was in the locker room. And that's what I read about him and jumped out at me, was how pivotal he was in the locker room and keeping that mindset positive, even when they were having a rough year in 22. So having said that, he started 33 games over 3 seasons with the Aggies. He lines up primarily at right guard. Remember the 2 rushers, that Isaiah Spiller and Devon. I always say this kid's name wrong. How do you say his last name, Mark? The player you like? Ashane?
The Notre Dame running back. Achan.
Yeah, Achan.
I'm sorry, you're talking about the Dolphins draft pick.
Yeah. So he had 2 1,000-yard rushers behind him. So kid was named to the All SEC Community Service Team. That was the kid I was mentioning before. Let me say that again for Ram Nation. Kid was named to the All SEC Community Service Team. Huge locker room presence. He hustles and fights to the whistle. He was the only offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl drills. Go back and watch it, Ram Nation. He ran to his spot at full speed between reps. He was the only O-lineman to do that. Okay? Every rep, whether he was getting to the back of the line or he was getting ready for his rep, boom, he was the only one that ran at full speed between reps. I think the Rams could use him at either guard position, depth for now. He's a possible starter, written all over him down the road. I think he would be a great addition. I love the community service. I love the leadership. And I love the durability, right? 33 games in the SEC, that's saying a lot.
Now he's 6'3", 330, the numbers I have on him. And does that lend itself to, does he fit the power running scheme that they've been leaning on?
Absolutely. And he's mobile. Absolutely. If you watch him, he's not stuck in concrete. This kid can move. He's nimble. Great hand usage. He's only going to get better with NFL coaching. He's got all the fundamentals are there if you watch him. The toughness, the hustle, the whistle to whistle effort, everything you need to be a success is there. He's also going up the draft board. Last time when I calculated him, they still had him at 4th or 5th round. So listen, offensive linemen are notoriously undervalued after round 3. So I think he's definitely going to be available as a day 3 player for the Rams, and I think he would be perfect for the Rams.
Yeah, Draft Tech has him as number 152 on their board. This is a little outdated. I've had this up for a while. So you got 2 guys left, the quarterback and the running back. Who are you going to talk about first?
I want to talk about, and we're going to stay on that vibe of just players like you want around your team, man. And this is a player just had a nasty injury, and I know Ram Nation is going to know who I'm talking about. This kid, Jordan Travis from Florida State. There's been a lot made about the quarterbacks in this draft and McCarthy, et cetera, and everything else. And listen, quarterback is a tough position to evaluate. This is the first time I ever heard Mel Kiper say that. This year was like probably the hardest quarterback class for him to evaluate. And he named J.J. McCarthy as number 1, really hard to evaluate. And he's right. Quarterback is a very hard position to evaluate because that transition from college to football is really, really, it's mind-blowing. And the proof is that people talk about Brady. What was the evaluation about Brady coming from college to the NFL? It just tells you, right? It's really hit and miss. But I like this kid. And let me tell you why I like this kid and why he's perfect for our segment. So Jordan Travis out of Palm Beach, Florida, he was a 3-star prospect. He was rated number 24 dual threat quarterback. Everybody knows Jordan Travis probably because of his running ability. He was the Palm Beach Player of the Year. He led his high school to 8 wins, regional final round of the state playoffs, was the conference's offensive player of the year as a junior, was an incredible 2-way player in high school. His brother, Devon Travis, played baseball at FSU and also played with the Toronto Blue Jays. So you definitely got the DNA of athleticism in this kid right there.
Yeah,
He played.
I watched a little bit of tape on him and didn't know much about him. Didn't watch much of Florida State this past year. And talk about extending plays. It was like Fran Tarkenton on double speed is what it looked
Interesting.
like.
Fran Tarkenton. Oh wow, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I could see that. So for those of you, that's Fran Tarkenton reference, right? For the Minnesota Viking fans out there, right? Ramley reference. Okay. This kid played a ton at FSU, right? He played multiple years at FSU. And what I liked about that was you watched FSU as their record got better and better and better. And eventually this year they were 11-0 before his injury, right? He was originally a transfer. Uh, hold on one second. I want to go directly to. I'm just going to jump over some of the background stuff. I want to go directly. He's an older player. He's 24 years old. He was originally a transfer from Louisville. He played 35 games at FSU, 5,888 yards and 45 touchdowns. Also add to that 1,700 yards and 24 touchdowns on 336 carries. He's one of 6 players in FSU history, the only active player nationally to rush for at least 7 touchdowns in 3 straight seasons, Mark. He holds the FSU career record for quarterback rushing yards and quarterback rushing touchdowns. He's the only player in program history, top 10 in FSU's career passing touchdowns and rushing touchdown list.
Do you think there's some similarities between him and JT Daniels?
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I mean, I could see that. I mean, there are a lot of great comps for this kid. You know, he has accounted for 70 total touchdowns at FSU. Okay. And he had his team undefeated. They were 11-0 before that gruesome injury. Okay. So, I mean, there's a lot to be said about this kid. I mean, in terms of running the ball, absolutely. But in terms of throwing the ball, they had him down as early day 3 grades from jump. Obviously his injury just made matters worse, but I think this kid's got the physical talent and more importantly, the college experience to be a successful quarterback. First of all, the kid is mobile. And I think the way you said it is different. He's not running because he doesn't have confidence in his arm. He's extending plays. Mark, you nailed it right there. He's extending plays because he has confidence in his arm. He knows he can make big plays with his legs. He knows that. But he also knows he can make bigger plays with his arm. And that's the difference, I think, for a lot of quarterbacks coming out of college. There are quarterbacks that run because that's their primary skill set. And then there are kids that run because they can extend plays. And if they need to get positive yards with their legs, they can do that. So they can hurt you both ways.
Yeah, it's kind of a dilemma when you're looking at, and this, I'm going to oversimplify this because I don't know football as deep as you and Ian and some other guys, but if I'm looking for the Rams' next franchise quarterback in a Sean McVay offense, I'm thinking Drake May, someone like that.
Interesting.
But if I'm looking for a backup quarterback this year, I think it's always nice to have, if it's a rookie, a guy that can, when things fall apart, things go sideways, it can get 6 yards on the ground. And that would be Jordan Travis, I think.
Yeah, or slide to the left, slide to the right, right? And then boom, throw it downfield, right? So that's exactly what we're talking about. I mean, the kid is cool under fire. Anybody who watched Florida State the last 2 years knows this kid is cool under fire. He's hyper competitive. His leadership ability is just absolutely amazing. He knows how to rally the troops around him. His interviews have been outstanding. So let's just stop. Leadership, mobility. Also, the kid is accurate. Now, the one thing I will say to the Ramley and for everybody in his camp, right? The kid needs to go into the weight room, needs to work on the arm strength, because right now the one knock against him is his arm strength. A lot of the deep balls that he threw were underthrown. And if you watch a lot of the Keon Coleman tape where they say lack of separation, I counted 10 balls that if it was out in front of him, there would have been plenty of separation. So just want to throw that out there because I know Casey's getting a lot of knocks against him for not being able to separate. So if you put that together, if you watch Travis throw the ball into these tight windows, he's able to do it. He gets rid of the ball quickly, has a nice smooth release, has that snap at the end of it, has a nice tight spiral, but the arm strength is definitely something that he needs to improve. I think once he gets stronger, once he hits the weight room, once he starts eating that NFL food, he'll start put on a little bit more weight. The accuracy is there and the consistency is there over the last 2 seasons. That's what I've seen. And then I think as he gets stronger, he's going to be able to drive the ball downfield with consistency. And talking about consistency, 22-23, the 2 seasons. All right. In 22, he threw 24 touchdowns, 5 INTs. 23, 2 fewer games, 20 touchdowns, 2 INTs, Mark. Do you like that touchdown INT ratio? 3,200 yards in 22, 2,750 yards in 23. Mark, you ready for consistency? Completion percentage, both years, 64%. In 22, he averaged 247 passing yards per game. In 23, 250 yards per game. Both years, Mark, 7 rushing TDs. Can you get any more consistent than that? Holy cow, right? And I actually had to double check because I thought I had those stats wrong. So I went to 2 different sites to double check. I was like, wow, that is remarkable consistency. And when you are throwing with that type of consistency, how can you tell me that this kid does not have a smooth, repeatable release? That's what this kid has. The arm strength will come. I don't think he has a weak arm, not at all, right? The way that he puts a zip on the ball. I just think he has to develop that arm strength. Half of that is mechanics. The other half, like I said, is getting stronger. But
yeah,
I'm sold on this kid.
Yeah, but before we move on to the last guy, Florida State's been popping up a lot in my mock drafts. Yeah. And I just filtered for Florida State. They're going to have quite a draft class. Jared Verse, Keon Coleman, Trey Benson, a running back I think you think's underrated. Braden Fisk tore it up at the Braden Fisk may have been the standout at the Senior Bowl. And I liked Johnny Wilson from day one. And I also liked their cornerback, Renardo Green, and now Jordan Travis. A bunch of other guys. They got a bunch of guys here that are draftable.
Renardo Green was on my list, by the way. For the sake of time, we didn't go over, but I'll do it probably after the Combine because I want to see how he does at the Combine. But I think Renardo Green is going to be a real sleeper in this draft.
Yeah, he fell into one of my drafts, and at the time I picked him, I didn't know who he was. I just needed a cornerback in the 6th or 7th round, whenever it was. Yep. Must have been the 6th round.
And these players that people have a hard time sort of pigeonholing, are they a cornerback? Are they a safety? They are made for the modern day cover 2 scheme. Dude, keep the ball in front of you, make a play on the ball. That's what they're made for.
Yeah. The last guy is a small school running back. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. The Jackrabbits. All right. So, this is one of my favorite players in the draft. I love this kid. I love watching him run. His name is Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State. Just a quick overview, grew up in Joplin, Missouri. As a senior, he was named the Missouri Gatorade Player of the Year, rushed for 45 touchdowns, also caught 19 passes for 2 more touchdowns. He also played linebacker on defense. He played at Dakota State. For those of you that don't know, 2-time national champion FCS, of course, 22 and 23. He was a first-team All-American in 23 FCS, Missouri Valley Football Conference Player of the Year, 2-time first-team All-Missouri Valley Football Conference. Mark Trend, 23 team captain. He was a team captain for 2023. He finished his career with 4,500 career rushing yards in 46 games. For those of you, that translates to 99 yards per game average. He's tied for 6th in program history with 51 career rushing touchdowns. Okay, once again, in 46 games. All right, he is a no-nonsense, violent runner. He has patience, got fantastic fundamentals. Mark, 2 fumbles in 2 years. Okay, he was the lead back, obviously, for these 2 championship teams over the past 2 seasons. Great in short yardage, great in the red zone. He is a cut-and-go runner with great balance. Got the best stiff arm in the NCAA. Watch his footage. You will see at least twice that stiff arm come into play. He's always falling forward, always fighting for extra yard. He has improved. He has worked hard to improve himself as a receiver and does well when he leaks out of the backfield. He would be a great complement to Iron Kyren to help establish that physical identity the Rams need on offense and sort of take, alleviate some of the load, short yardage goal line at times. He would be equally adept in the zone or power gap scheme. And one thing I will say to you, and tell me who this sounds like, when they were interviewing him about him getting ready for the combine, they asked, what do you want people to see when you're at the combine? Listen to what he said. Who does this remind you of? He said, my competitiveness. He didn't say my cutback ability, my speed. He said, I want to notice my competitiveness. I worked hard to get to where I am. That statement alone, I'm drafting this kid. Who does that sound like? That's exactly what Puka, when they asked Puka, what set you apart? How did all these teams miss you that you wound up in round 5? And that's what he said. He said, you can't quantify competitiveness, toughness, desire.
And you see that every time Puka makes a catch. It's amazing. And my notes on Davis suggest he may last to the 7th round. Now, could go earlier. Maybe we should shut up about him and he'll be there for the
leave the segment immediately, right? So,
yeah. How do we know anything about his pass blocking?
I didn't see too much about it. When I watched him, most of they were a heavy running team, the Jackrabbits. So I didn't see too many clips of that. I'm sure a player like this who's committed to getting better, he can develop that, and he's tough enough that I don't think that'll be an issue moving forward. But one thing I will say. There are day 3 running backs for a lot of teams. Do not waste valuable draft picks on a reach running back. There is so much talent at the lower rounds of this draft, and I cannot explain why. I think a lot of it has to do because a lot of players did not play in the bowl games, so we didn't get a chance to see them on that sort of that ultra spotlight sort of stage. But I am telling you, and we saw this when we did the mock draft. I said that kid from Alabama, McCullen, I think he's fantastic. Edwards, the kid from running back, who I think is an Iron Kyren clone. There are so many great running backs. There are a couple of stash players as well in the late rounds. I think teams can do very well for themselves on day 3 and find that Puka mindset running back, that ultra competitive warrior that is going to get it done on the field. Listen,
yeah, I think
Puka's one of one.
Right.
When we cite Puka, that Puka mindset is that willingness to get better, that willingness to win, that willingness, that fearlessness, that dedication, but at the same time being able to do it with a smile on your face and understand that you're doing it.
Yeah, for the and I don't think we can understate. I mean, I totally agree with you, Puka's toughness, but I think having Cooper Kupp having his arm around his shoulder and telling him this is how it gets done, this is how you do it, and you see that in little comments that Puka makes
all the time.
A lot of his decision making is, what would Cooper do? How would Cooper handle this? Well, is Cooper going to be mad at me? Things like.
But that's the whole idea, right? When you have the luxury, right? Greatness recognizes greatness, right? I love that phrase. But recognizing that is one thing, but helping to develop it is another. I'm not going to shout out any name, but remember, not too long ago, there was a player that was asked, "Are you going to help that player develop?" And he said, "That's not my job." Remember that?
Right.
That's
happened quite a bit, yeah.
And that soundbite says it all. The difference is, and when people have a chance, there's an incredible Ram media out there about the sound bites, particularly about Cooper Kupp and Puka. And those little exchanges, right? Wow. There's about 15 of them where after a play, Cooper just turns to Puka and says, "Puka, you're a baller."
Yeah,
right?
and this is going to sound really maybe cheesy, but in my career, I try to never say it's not my job.
Yeah, right.
I try to never say that. It doesn't have to be your job. You can step up and do things that are outside your normal scope of duties. If it's going to help a teammate, if it's going to help another team, if it's going to help a neighbor, just step up and do it. It's that willingness to help. Some people have it and some people don't. I guess that's what it comes down to.
That's actually a very classic principle in organizational psychology, industrial psych. Mark, and for Ram Nation, that comes up a lot, is that usually your most talented workers take on the most responsibility, or begrudgingly have to take on that responsibility because they want to get the job done, right? So what usually happens is your least talented employees get the least amount of work, which is absolutely like sort of counterintuitive, but that's usually how it plays up in larger organizations. In this case, when you have guys like Donald, when you have guys like Whitworth, when you have guys like Cup, you have guys like Stafford that are willing to teach and willing to support and willing to, just encourage and mentor other players. That's how you build a winning dynamic. That's how you build a winning organization. And we saw it play out with Puka. Cooper in his ear. Cooper in his ear. Can you put a value on that?
Right.
And the video that just came out on social media, Mark, sorry to interrupt. There's a great video of the two of them working out. I think it's only a week old. The two of them working out.
Right. I saw that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, getting close to closing here, and I have two comments I wanted to make. Back to the running backs. Mm-hmm. I think with the Ram running backs, whoever they bring in, they're not going to get on the field until they can pass block. So if Isaiah Davis can't pass block, he'll learn it. And when he does learn it, I almost wonder if it's Matthew Stafford that gives Sean McVay the thumbs up. Yeah, okay, you can put that guy out here to protect me. Until I say he's ready, he's not, because you saw running backs come off the field a lot in passing situations. They just weren't out there. And they got to be able to pass block in this offense. Go ahead.
You know what's interesting, when we started this, I think like your pass blocking skill development example, I think is absolutely perfect. So what I told Mark when I first, I wouldn't say like I'm a draft fanatic. I'm not, but I do think it's a very functional part of a team, because I think the personality of the team is constructed of the players you bring onto it. It's just obvious, correct? So when we did this list originally, right? So the way I started, I identify 100 players that I like. Mark knows I'm completely biased. These are the 100 players. I don't care how they're ranked. Draft them, right? These are the players we're going to draft. We're going to go out and get them. Of that 100, now think about some of the things that we emphasize. What did we emphasize? Multiple year starters. We said team captaincy, right? Or some other accolade about leadership. We also said academics, right? Being a priority. Of that 100, Mark, correct? That were day 3. Almost half now are day 2. Do you think that's coincidental?
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's the personality characteristics and a lot of these intangibles that get undervalued early on. But once, as we say, the proverbial, when all the BS stops, that becomes a very critical factor. And as you're saying, when you're bringing in these players, they may not contribute today, but you have to have an eye to the future. That's why this segment, I love doing this segment. And I love doing it with Mark, because Mark, definitely is able to pick up on that, is that finding these players that are under the radar are really, when we're bringing them in, is for the eye for the future, not just what they bring today. So they may not be an instantaneous starter like Mark is saying, but down the road, who knows, right? But they might be instantaneous starters. Nobody picked Puka. Brian Young, shocked everybody. And listen, Kobe Turner shocked me. I didn't think he would be a day 1 starter, right? So there you go. So please continue your thought. I just wanted to
Kyron Williams, another 5th rounder.
Kyron, yeah.
Well, the one thing I wanted to add is, like, one of the reasons we wanted to do this segment was we wanted to get ahead of the combine and call out a bunch of players that we like and that Paul likes, and that are going to rise, possibly elevate their name at the combine. One thing to keep in mind, though, is, from what I've been reading, the Rams aren't going to put a lot of weight on the combine. Apparently, they haven't the last few years. I think a lot of their decision making is already done, except for maybe some interviews. Now, I don't know if there's going to be any Rams staff there interviewing players. They do
the interviews virtually. That's
okay. Yeah. So what they want to do is, Sean McVay said it yesterday or the day before. Emphasis on toughness, that football is the biggest part of their life, and that their personality is the type of person they want in their locker room. And I think every one of the guys that you described fit that. Now, what we it's interesting. You almost hope that if the Rams don't put any weight on in the combine, you almost hope a couple of these guys don't shine at the combine. They trip and fall in the 40.
Look at Mark. Oh my
It's not
God.
Sean McVay's not going to care. He's not going. If he likes Trevin Wallace, do we want Trevin Wallace to kick some butt at the combine? Maybe not. Yeah.
So how do you interpret that? Like the fact that not that they dismiss it. I don't think they dismiss it, but they don't feel like they need to have like this real time presence there. Everything they say that, listen, it's modern age. Like, the way he said it was, listen, I can watch all this from home, or the famous Ram house that they go and they watch everything. Right. So, which makes a lot of sense. There's a reason that all that is transmitted. Right. What in your mind, how do you interpret that? Like, what does that mean in, we know the sort of the nice way, but what does it really mean to you? Like when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of everything, what do you think it means?
You mean about what McVay said about not attending the combine and not
the Rams as an organization, right? Not attending the combine. What do you think it means?
I think it means that the time that they have the film on the players, they can do their interviews, and if Trevin Wallace runs a 4.52 or a 4.92, they don't care. And I could be wrong, but I mean, we saw what Puka did at the combine last year.
Yeah,
they're almost, you almost felt like they were going to ask him, son, you need to go home. This isn't going to work out. So I don't know. Is my answer what you expected?
No, I'm just interested in everybody else's thoughts because, remember a while ago we did a pod and we were talking about the draft. I think the first time we did the draft thing, and one of my favorite football, just not just players, but just football people, is Ozzie Newsome. And when he was running for the Ravens.
Right.
So he said something that always stuck with me. He says, I already did my board, right? He says the combine only does one thing for me. They move them up, or we identify something medically that, makes us question something, right? We don't restack our entire board based on the combine. You can only get moved up or you stay where you're at. The only time that somebody gets penalized is because of some type of medical situation. Now, one of the things the draft has become, and has become very reductionistic, right? So we just talked, and Mark, you said it best. You said a kid that's played 33 games in the SEC, right? And now you're going to break it down to one showcase at the Senior Bowl and then the combine. And everybody's talking about what they did at the Senior Bowl and the combine. And you're absolutely right. You and I want to see how they do when the pressure's on, right? And I think that one of the biggest changes for the NFL moving forward is evaluating players when more than half of them are not going to play in bowl games, right? They're going to opt out of the bowl game. And I think that's going to be a big challenge for a lot of NFL teams moving forward. Because for me, the bowl games were always, under the clutch time. I want to see how the players roll. So what we might be seeing is a lot of teams now saying, well, I want to see, this is their clutch time. I want to see how they perform. I think the Rams sort of downplaying it is just like, as you said, they said, listen, I cannot devalue a player who's knocked out 33 games in the SEC and has proven they can play football, right? They have already proven that to us. What we want to see now is maybe like a sort of a small sampling of their skills in isolation so we can see how that's going to translate, right? How that's going to translate in certain scenarios. Maybe we give them certain tasks that we want to do, certain niche types of tasks that we want to execute in our offense or our defense. That's the way I'm looking at it. So I agree with you. I think exactly right. It's not a reductionistic viewpoint of these players and their performance. And I think that it keeps it in perspective. So I actually like the fact they're doing it that way. I still think the interviews are important. That's like what I'm looking forward to. And I'm glad they do the interviews first and they get into the skills right after that. But yeah, so I think you're right. I think it's really, really interesting, the Rams' approach to the draft.
Yeah, I mean, Puka, just go look at his what happened with him, his college career, and then the combine, and
and it's not just it's not just Puka. Cooper Kupp
Oh,
raised a lot of eyebrows when they picked Cooper Kupp. They raised a lot of
yeah.
eyebrows.
And Puka's speed on the field in the NFL was excellent. You know, I think he got clocked as one of the fastest wide receivers at one point. So yeah, the Rams are getting it right. I mean, they're not perfect, but I'm not sure what happened with Stetson Bennett. That was the one real miss
Yeah,
last year. But there's maybe something going on that's just not part of their analytics, you know,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
missed it.
We
But
hope, we hope that Stetson gets everything in order and everything's okay. But
yeah,
that's something that's listen, and we saw that with Kendrick too, right?
yeah,
And we said that in the draft when it first happened, right? Both those players had something happen before the draft, right? Something came up, right? We all know what happened with Stetson Bennett. We don't need to talk about it, right? There was that incident that happened. There was the incident with Kendrick that happened through his collegiate days, right? And listen, these red flags come up. You can't just dismiss a player for that. You have to give them the opportunity to grow, depending on what the situation is, of course. Right. There was a player on our list, Mark and I, we said we found out something about the background. We took them off the list, obviously, because, the list, exemplifies a certain thing. But, there are players that, if we did the segment, the list would be 40 players long, Mark, right?
right.
So we know what's going to happen is that as these players move up off the list, they're like day two wonders, whatever they may be. The other players are now going to come on the list, right? And that's generally what happens in the NFL. The players move up, other players go into the limelight. You had just talked about the kid from Florida State, Green. There's a quarterback from Tulane, Jarius Monroe. I want to throw his name out. Kyrie Jackson was the corner that I loved. Actually, is now a solid day two player according to the rankings. I think Kyrie Jackson just fits the Rams so well. And then another corner / safety is the kid from Auburn. Two actually. There's Simpson, and then the other one is Pritchett, which I also like. Sneed will be happy.
Nathaniel Pritchett.
Yeah, I know Sneed will be happy about the Auburn shout out.
Yeah, I remember reading about Pritchett actually, and I made an off-the-cuff comment. I don't know if I included this on a podcast or not. They said that he's very cautious in his coverage and plays off a little bit. And I said, well, that's perfect. That's exactly what the Rams have been doing for 2 or 3 years. Bring him on in.
Yeah, right. But Jarius Monroe from Tulane is a kid I really, really like.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've covered enough for this episode. We got through your primary guys there. We end up with 14 of Paul's Puka Power Prospects. And let's do this again after the Combine, and we'll either talk about another 10 guys, or we'll re-rack and stack these guys, see which ones maybe elevated themselves too much. And I guess what we're hoping for, like I said, it's kind of torn here. Maybe we don't want these guys to stand out too much, because if they already have Sean's eye and Les Snead's eye, just stand pat and fall to the Rams.
Yeah, and that's sort of the subscript, right? Is that this is a Rams Up podcast. So everything these players, and we're hoping, fingers crossed, right, that they wind up on our roster, right, because of what they bring to the table, right?
And I hope Les and Sean appreciate this. They're probably in Cabo sipping margaritas, waiting for this video to drop.
Right, exactly. Yeah, high on their list. Right, exactly.
Doing all their homework for them.
Yeah, they have people much more capable than you and I, right, taking care of business.
Yeah. Okay, Paul, thanks a lot for your time. It was a lot of fun, and I'll see you at the round table.
Absolutely. Double ram horns.
Okay, out here.